Okay. All right. Hi
There
everybody.
we go.
Oh, there. Oh, look, he's got the mic and everything. Oh my
How to
God.
get
Like,
how to get
Tim,
the mic. How to get the
dude,
mic.
it sounds so good. It sounds so good. Um, yeah, we want you guys to be able to hear Erin and Corey, our co-hosts today. Don't worry, you won't have to hear from me all hour, but I just want to kind of set the stage for everybody and then hand it over to Erin and Corey. You guys, this is part of our short-term rental webinar series for Grid. We are bringing you multiple opportunities throughout the year, free training, high level free training throughout the year on different niche subjects. And Corey and Erin are really going to lead the charge for our short term rental webinars. So we really appreciate them. Both of them are coming from kind of different perspectives in the STR space. They both do, have different backgrounds in the STR space. So you're going to get a combination of both of their perspectives around the short-term rental, market for everything from, identifying these assets, buying them, renovating them, managing them. They have so much to share with you guys, and I know they're really excited because we've been working hard to prep this series for you. So this won't just be this month, it will be monthly. So if you guys are interested in STRs, make sure you check out the calendar because they are going to bring it every single month, and they're going to have special guests join us as well. And there's a different topic for each month. Um, all good, Tim. He says he has a bad connection. It might get dropped. Yes, you will have access to a recording, so you guys will get the playback. We do ask that if you are able to turn your camera on, bring some energy to the room. We love to see your smiling faces. We really, really appreciate that. It helps. I know when I'm presenting and I'm looking at a bunch of black boxes, it just, it's just it's harder. It's harder to connect with you. So if you can turn on your cameras, that'd be awesome. So you will get the recording. We are recording it. Chat in the chat. Ria, will you drop in the chat? Actually, will you drop a link to next month's? I'm not sure if we have the link ready for that one. If we don't, that's cool. If we do, put it in there. And everybody just kind of drop in the chat. Like, where are you coming from? Are you currently an agent or an investor? What are you looking for? What questions do you have around the STR space that Corey and Erin can answer for you? This is really like an intro, but I know that they will start with kind of the overview and then get in the weeds, especially throughout the year. So I will shut up now and hand it over to Erin. Erin, do you want to go first and kind of introduce yourself? Corey, you guys can do
Yeah,
the
sure.
same, and then it's all yours, guys. It's all yours.
Awesome. Well,
Thanks.
thank you everyone for registering and being here today. Certainly a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Um, I'm coming from the realtor slash investor space. So I've been a realtor since 2002. Focused most of my business on the people that I like, loved, and trust the most, the sphere of influence. When I joined CAZA is when I really started getting into the investment side of the business. Okay, so I joined CAZA in January of 2018. Been with them 7 years. Have taken the agent investor class. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, the next time it comes around, you should be jumping in on it. It's a wonderful opportunity to learn how to do all kinds of real estate investing. Number one, but ultimately, business changed back in 2020 when we had that lovely little thing rolling around called COVID. And a lot of individuals decided that they wanted to get out of Dodge, get away from people as close as, that were very close to them, and at least be able to work from home. And so we saw an influx of people. And now I live in Western Loudoun County, Clark County. So we're on the edge of the Shenandoah Valley and the northern side of it, about an hour and a half west of DC. So what I saw was a trend of people buying properties that are short-term rental capability. So people could come and go. They could still vacation. They could still do work from their properties and things like that. So that's really where I started. Man, I got into it the hard way, banging my head against the wall. I wound up with one referral, looking at log cabins, and it took 6 months to figure it out, right? What areas do you want to really focus in on? What types of homes? Are there any rules and regulations? Um, how much money can you actually make? And I was learning as I was going. And so for me, it was just trial and fire and, ready, aim, shoot type of scenario from what we do. So um, since then, I've connected with Corey, who is a master business planner, short-term expert, co-host slash investor himself, taught me a ton about the business. And now I look at real estate investing in a completely different way. So, from my perspective, every property that you run into, I consider it an investment in which type of direction, right? So, is it a fix and flip? Is it a buy and hold? Is it something that you can wholesale? There's different layers of financing. Can you subject to these opportunities? All kinds of really interesting things. But ultimately, what I found in my life was I was growing up, first jobs out of high school and all that were restaurant managers and restaurant opportunities, bartenders, waiting tables. So it was all hospitality based, right? We also know in the back of my mind, I love going on vacation. And so for me, this job turned into something so much bigger than just helping a family move forward. It's more of, finding a place to vacation, make some money, and then take a look at the property itself and really narrow down what is the best and possible use for each investment. And so, as you learn all these tools, the things that we preach on a day-to-day basis, you really find your niche, and short-term rentals has turned into mine. So, Corey, I'll turn it over to you. Give me the scoop.
Cool, man. I'm Corey. I live actually down in Raleigh, North Carolina now. But I lived in Annapolis, Maryland for a while. I worked for a company that some of you might be familiar with. It's called CoStar. CoStar deals a lot with commercial real estate, dealing with brokerages, investment grade properties, commercial. But I've always been interested in investing myself in real estate. So I started investing about 18 years ago. Bought a single family that was my primary residence with the thought that one day I would have it as a rental property for somebody else. And I did that one, two, three, four times. Started getting into multifamily, bought a number of multifamily properties. Those are up and running in Maryland still. I have them. Even after we moved down to North Carolina, I hung on to those assets and they still churn very well with a property manager in place. In 2021, I think it was 2021 and 2022, one of the things that we did is we started hearing about these short-term rentals, and I had a long-term rental in Annapolis, Maryland, and we were doing fine with it. We were making money. Our mortgage was $1,800 a month. We were renting it out for $2,300 a month. The property manager would take their cut, and we would go walk away with the profit. And what we decided to do is turn that into a short-term rental. So after the last tenants moved out, we popped that. We got a designer. We had them come in, redo all the furniture, and we put it up on Airbnb. And that property went from doing $2,300 a month in gross to $8,000 a month in gross. So that was kind of the eye opener for me. And I was like, okay, this works. Obviously, that's gross. There's money that comes off the top of that. You have to pay the cleaner. You have to pay the electric bills now. And you have to pay all the other utilities. However, we were still profiting $2,000 to $3,000 a month more than what we were doing as a long-term rental. So once we figured that out, we started going all in on the short-term rentals. So we were looking around at different markets. Shenandoah caught our eye. Bought my first property in Shenandoah in 2022 for $430,000. Put some work into it. Made it a very profitable rental. We were grossing, I'm sorry, over $100,000 on that property. And then we went ahead and sold it. I'll be going into more detail on that at the Grid Network on the 8th, I believe, up in Shenandoah, right? Somewhere up
Yeah,
there.
Front Royal.
Front
Yes, the
Royal.
grid. Yeah. So we'll put a link out to that if you're interested in coming, but it'll also be recorded for sure.
Yeah. So Then we just started buying more, right? So we bought more. We bought more. We now own 5 short-term rentals in Shenandoah, the Shenandoah region, all very profitable. And the next thing we have started flipping into is co-hosting. So we also manage 7 other properties for people. That's continuing to grow. And it's nice how this is now branched off. The short-term rental world is not just about the short-term rental. It branches off into a number of different spaces. There's consulting you can do, there's revenue management, there's the co-hosting, there's design, and then there's obviously coaching, which I do as well. So it's been fun. I'm all in on this. Left CoStar 3 years ago, right when we started seeing how much money our short-term rentals could make, and we've gone all in on this and never looking back. This is the way to go. So Erin and I have started working together. He's always throwing properties my way, and I'm always finding people that are interested in getting in the space, but really just not sure where to start. And with the properties that Erin has, some of which are off market, usually get people into really good deals without them having to aggressively compete with other people that are out there.
Yeah.
That's where
So,
we're at.
Corey, let me ask you. So, and I know that there are hundreds of real estate agents in each individual areas. But the specific agents that know how to manage or what it looks like, what is a short-term rental, what type of house does it look like, the little investment cues that you can hear when people are talking, it makes a huge difference. A regular agent can help write a contract, that's no problem, but understanding projections, the design, the whole kit of that Airbnb short-term rental property is super important. So, that's why, having this niche is huge. Since I started, my business has improved. I always thought that it was so tough to really give up, sort of burn the bridge with some of the sphere of influence stuff. But now I'm actually more specific with the people that I work with, is so it helps me generate more opportunities. It helps my clients generate more income because I'm spreading the word as well. It's a network, right? It's not what you know. It is what you know. It's also who you know, right? So, Corey's got a stream scenario, straight up how it works. We'll get into that in a couple of minutes, but before we get any further, anybody have any questions about how we got started? Just unmute and spit it out. No?
Hello.
Okay.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah, Greg,
Hey,
go ahead.
Hey. So, my question is, are there any pitfalls that you may have experienced? Because I'm accustomed to doing rentals the traditional way and not Airbnb, and so don't know a lot about it. But is there anything that you wish you would have known going into it prior to, and just the big advantages of Airbnb versus the traditional renting?
Yeah. So I think
Corey,
that, yeah,
yeah.
I got it. So one of the things that I think is a little bit different is, I don't know, Gregory, if you have a property management company handling your properties or you're doing it yourself. Uh, the one thing that I will tell you is different is, unless you have a co-host that knows what they're doing, you are very hands-on this business. This is not passive income. So anybody who's told you that, run from them. This is not passive. You can make it kind of passive, but you are going to need to be involved on a regular basis. There are automations you can set up. There are things you can do. It's more passive, obviously, if you have one property, but if you're looking to scale and grow and you get more and more, it becomes less and less passive. So that's the first thing. What kind of pitfalls? I'll throw the question back at you, Gregory, right? Like, what kind of pitfalls did you head into when you started doing your long-term rental properties? Because I think there's a lot of similarity from my experience between long-term and short-term. You've got to have your teams in place. Your HVACs are going to die, right? Your heat is
Yeah.
not going to turn on. The power is going to go out. Like, all the normal things that happen in any other house are also going to happen in short-term rentals. You just need to make sure that you have a team in place that can course correct very quickly so that you're not disrupting the new guests that are coming in or the guests that are currently there?
Yeah. I guess it's just the regular stuff of once you get it listed and rented, the regular issues with repairs and so forth. So my rentals are in Virginia. I live in North Carolina, so having to reach out to vendors and contractors to try to get work done and so forth. But with this particular property that I'm thinking about doing Airbnb, I'll be local too, so I could be more hands-on if needed. Um, but I guess the big thing is not knowing that you're going to have the steady income coming in with a 12-month lease.
Gotcha.
Well, that's one of the things I like the most about it. When I had my 12-month leases, one of the things that I found and that I was always sitting there saying to myself in my head is it's really nice to get these paychecks and get the money deposited at the beginning of every month. Like, I have no complaints about that. Now, how do I get money coming in throughout the month? Right. And so the short-term rentals, they don't pay you out monthly. Every time a guest stays at your property, you get the payout on that property. So when you have one, it's kind of cool. You're getting, 5 to 10 payouts a month. You get 2, you get 3, you get 5, you get 10. All of a sudden, those payments are going out daily, right? So there's money coming into your bank account on a daily basis, and it's more money than you would get on the long-term rental.
Yeah, let me just tag in on some of the other pitfalls that I see. So first and foremost, looking for the property, right? So the type of property that you find, you can put it. Well, we'll start back here. Certain areas require short-term rental permits or short-term, registration so that they can collect some occupancy taxes. Okay. So one of the pitfalls is identifying the areas that have the more strict restrictions. For example, Warren County, where we are, which is an hour and 25 minutes west of Washington, D.C., has a 90-day permitting process that costs $1,700 to start. You cannot do it until you actually have purchased the property. And at any moment, a neighbor who does not want a short-term rental in the neighborhood could say, I don't want it, at one of the 3 court hearings that you have to go through. And then your short-term rental investment is now something else, right? So knowing the rules and regulations is a pitfall, or a strength. If you know what you're doing, you can avoid a lot of those issues. So that's the first one. The second is what Corey mentioned. It's not a set it and forget it type of business. This is a everyday, every week management scenario where you have to make sure you have supplies in the house, toilet paper, salt and pepper, ketchup. You get broken plates, you get, light bulbs. There's other things that come along with this. It's like running a hotel. So that's a pitfall. At the same time, the benefit outweighs, the regular rental based on income. And I don't know where most people are investing from around where we are, but it's very hard to find a profitable long-term rental in our area with the interest rates and the current competition that's out there without having to do some kind of, repair to the property. Right.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's no such thing as a turnkey Airbnb, right? Like, let's just throw that out there. Anybody who's telling you they got a turnkey product, it's really not a turnkey product. You are going to go in, you're going to put your own touches on it. There are things that are going to need to be taken care of at the property. The other pitfall, I guess it's not really a pitfall, but it's one thing to keep in mind, is it costs money to get into them, right? Same thing. They're considered investment properties. I know there's ways around that. I know there's ways to buy them as a vacation property. I know somebody who's bought it as a primary residence, so they only have to put the 3% down. But if you're playing by the rules, you're looking at putting 20 to 25% down on the property, and then you have to take into account any renovations and that you might want to do. If the property is furnished, terrific. If it's not, you're going to have to put furniture in there. So I'd say it's a baseline on average. I'd say walking into a short-term rental in the areas we're talking about, and this is like Page and Shenandoah County, probably Warren County is the same. It might be a little bit higher. You probably need about 150,000 to invest in the property. And that goes to your down payment, your closing costs, and any renovation and furnishings that you're going to have to buy for the place. Right? There's ways to do it more inexpensive than others. I don't think you necessarily need to go to West Elm and Pottery Barn when you're furnishing a cabin in Page County. However, you still need the money to come up with the down payment, any renovations. You're going to need a hot tub. So if there's not one there, you're going to have to put one in. So again, there's a barrier to entry, but it can be done. And when you do it, the ROI on the back end is very high.
Yeah, and there's also future pacing. All right. So, for example, there is a neighborhood I know right now that is awesome for short-term rentals, but at any moment that HOA can say, okay, now we've had enough, and they turn off any new. So, we are currently watching the municipalities, the cities, the counties, and the homeowners associations to make sure that we're staying on the cutting edge of where a solid investment would be, on top of the amenities that are around that area. So, if you get something that's extremely rural, it might look really awesome as a short-term rental, but you can't get to the property very easily, especially in the dark. That's going to deter some people from renting your place because it's too hard to get to. So, I know of a portfolio right now where it's 7 properties. They're making about $400,000 or $500,000 in gross revenue. The property, themselves are straight up a mountain that you need a 4x4 to get to. And, sometimes while the views are amazing and that's what everybody looks for, it's the other stuff that kind of hinders that from going there. So, just some things to kind of consider. So we go back to, the property specifically. Where is it located? What municipality is it in? Does it have an HOA? And then looking at the amenities around it so that we don't step in a hole that we can't get out of. So great question, Greg. Anybody else real quick?
All right.
Okay.
Tailing on what you were saying about the property and the location, I always say, we've talked about this, Erin, right? I've got my little, my 3 Ps on the property that I look for. The 3, they're kind of pillars that I think they can make or break a property as a short-term rental.
But stop for 1 second.
Yeah.
If you haven't taken any notes, write this one down. This is the hottest part of the business right here.
So the first thing is the property, right? There are properties out there. I know a guy, I'll start with this, right? I know a guy, his name is Joel, and Joel buys properties where there is absolutely no data for short-term rentals. Many of you may have heard of like AirDNA and Rabu, where you can go in and you can kind of get projections on your property. The properties that he goes for, there's no data on them because they're in the middle of nowhere. However, he buys properties that have the look, right? So it's got to have that aesthetic look that is going to draw somebody's attention to it when they're looking at it on the pictures on Airbnb. That is that the pictures on Airbnb are the only thing that you have to sell your property. Nobody's calling you to talk to you about it. You can't reach out to people after they've looked at your property and tell them how great it is. They see the pictures and they decide whether they're going to stay at your property based upon the pictures. And if your property has a cool aesthetic, like an outside that looks nice with some dormers in there, different angles, you've seen these circular buildings, they catch people's eye, and that's why they decide to stay there. And moving beyond the exterior of the property, the interior has to have the right design as well, right? So if you've got the right design on the interior, matched with the aesthetically pleasing exterior, and then you've got the amenities in that property that match with what's going on in the area, you've got the first P covered, right? Again, it doesn't necessarily have to do with where the property is located. The property could be saturated. If you're bringing a better product to that market, you're going to pull away from those other properties and people are going to stay at yours. That's kind of the first P that I like to cover when we're looking at short-term rentals and what makes a good short-term rental, or is your short-term rental going to work?
Right. So I've got a question in here. Where did we learn this, right? So it's years of experience. It's years of just knowing, like Corey mentioned, the right property. This particular individual, he goes after a certain architecture style. It has to be an A-frame. If it's not an A-frame, he's not interested, right? And why an A-frame? Because what I know about A-frames, that they do look cool. And by the way, I own an A-frame. They are awesome. They have beautiful windows. They have all the aesthetics that you need, but a lot of them are smaller, 2-bed, 1-bath, or 2-bed with a loft, and still considered a two, they consider it a 3-bed, but it's actually a 2-bed because they only have 2 doors that close. So it's an interesting game, but certainly property specific is the most important. He started talking about secondarily the photos. I can't tell you.
Before you jump into
ahead.
that, right? Somebody said, where do we learn all this? I can speak for myself and tell you that I think the most important part of this whole business is talk to every single person you possibly can, right? So somebody else asked me that a while ago. They're like, where did you learn all this? And my answer was, I talk to everybody. Uh, Wendy can attest to this. I see her on the call, right? Like my line, Erin will attest to this as well. My line is open, right? I will give you my phone number. You are welcome to call or text me at any time, because what you can learn from me, I can also learn something from you. So every time I get involved in a property, I go ahead and I talk to as many people as possible. I don't care if it's the maintenance guy, the cleaner, when somebody's doing repairs on the property, whether it's a guy installing HVAC systems, I sit there, a guy digging a well, I sit there and ask away about anything that I don't understand. And that helps me talk to other people about the same issues, but it also helps me better understand and better able to troubleshoot when I have issues going on moving forward from a maintenance perspective. And again, as you start to learn, you start to connect more with other short-term rental owners. You learn more and more about what's going on with their properties, how they're performing, uh, other resources in the area. So I talk to everybody. I will throw my number out there right now. It's 301-725-6306. You are welcome to call me. If you cannot get a hold of me, you can text me and I will call you back and we can have a conversation about whatever you'd like.
And this is how Corey and I met. Yeah. So one day we were trolling Facebook in one social, short-term rental group or whatever. And I just happened to mention that I was the guy that was selling them out there. And so he picked up the phone and called me directly. And now we have a relationship that's 2 or 3 years long. I've helped him buy a couple of houses. And so, he's absolutely correct. You want to talk about success, talk to people, right? Learn from their mistakes. Like they'll be the first one to tell you right out the chute that they've made a mistake at this thing and they should not have made this investment, or how do we repair from this this investment. And so it's a word of mouth or a specific network of people that really help you. So
yeah, and I can tell you, tailing off of that first investment property that I bought 18 years ago, I lost my shirt on that thing.
Yeah.
Lost my shirt, right? I mean, I never made any money on it. And it's fine. I'm still here. I'm doing fine. Quit my corporate job 3 years ago and I'm kicking. So
well, and
it's all good.
Like any
Mistakes
other
are going to
investment,
happen.
right?
Like that was I paid for that education, right? I paid for all the stuff that I learned from that property. So don't be scared. It's not going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. Things are going to go wrong. Things are also going to go right, right? The more you do it, the more often you do it, you're going to land and somebody's going to turn around to you and be like, man, you got really lucky with that one. Well, you didn't see the last 5 that, with all the problems that happened on those, right? Like you're just seeing this one. And yeah, I got lucky because I was ready for it and I knew what I was looking for because of the last 3 ones that weren't so great.
Yeah. And like I mentioned back in 2020 during COVID, I'm looking at properties, just log cabins and A-frames and all this stuff, not knowing that there were rules, not knowing there were, you have to do certain things and stuff like that. I was just out there because it was what I did, right? So, stepping into it, you might just bang your head against the wall for a few minutes, but there's a ton of coaching programs out there right now that, you know, that people are paying for. And so that's why we're here doing this webinar. We want to teach you how to do stuff and put you in the right position to talk to the right people so that you are 10,000 steps ahead of the next guy just buying a property for putting it out there.
And you've got $10,000 in your pocket as well, right? There are programs out there. They're going to charge you 5,000, 10,000. I had a guy I was talking to last week, and he's like, I'm so glad I talked to you. He's like, I was about to drop $20,000 on a mastermind course. I've done them. They're not worth the money. Like everything that you can learn on there, you can learn on, again, YouTube, Facebook. There's stuff out there, or give me a call and we can set something up so we can walk them. I can walk you through it. It's not as difficult as everybody makes it seem.
So a gentleman, Eric Corson, just jumped on. Eric runs a STR tech chat group, right? And so Eric, can you hop on for a second? Just to, kind of give us your experience of what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you guys are saying is 100% spot on, right? Like we all start somewhere, and the key to success is definitely surrounding yourself with people that have the experience that you don't have and learning from them. I bought my first house 4 years ago. I didn't know what I was doing. I made some mistakes, and slowly over the years, there's a number of Facebook groups that I'm in that it's full of people smarter than me, and that's generally my goal. When I walk into a room, I want to be the least smart person in there. And there's just so much information out there that's readily available. I will say I've joined one mastermind group that I've got a lot of benefit out of, but it's not so much in like the day-to-day coaching and how to run the business. You figure that stuff out as you go along. And you mentioned my Facebook group, which is technology related specifically in the short-term rental space. And the technology just continues to get better and better, and it helps you along the way. Automating things like guest messaging, automating, communicating with your cleaners, and just and it only continues to get better and better. So anyone that's concerned about the time or effort that you have to put into running a short-term rental is mitigated somewhat by the help of technology. So, if that's holding you back, I'd say let yourself free.
Yeah, and so I met Eric along the way. He was introduced to me by a friend of mine, and he was looking at properties out here in the Shenandoah Valley. He lives in Northern Virginia, but is a tech guru. So he's created his own group called the STR Tech Talk, and will help kind of do it. So the learning process happens through social, right? And through the communication, like the people that you talk to and that you meet. So thank you, Eric, for hopping on here. We'll have a discussion at some point with you, or a host with you at some point about what you're doing and how we can help, fill your pipeline too, because that's really what this comes down to.
Sounds good. Happy to be here, Aaron. Thanks.
All right, Corey. So next step, what is the second P?
The second one is photography. This one's tough because everybody has the iPhones and everybody's an expert photographer, but you're not. You've got to hire a professional photographer to do these pictures. You've got to get the interior, exterior, twilight, and drone shots on each of your properties. Those are the ones that stand out. Those are the ones that look good. You want somebody who's got a 16mm camera because you want it to be able to capture the whole bedroom or as much of the bathroom as possible, not just one wall and a bed. So make sure that whatever photographer you're using, they have a 16mm camera and they're able to do drone shots and twilight shots. Not photographed and photoshopped twilight shots, actual photography where the sun is going down. This is a tough one to stress because most people don't understand how important it is. Most people also don't want to spend the money for it. The gentleman that I have he drives from Arlington to come up to Shenandoah to shoot my pictures for me. It's about $1,000 a pop, right? And that's for him to come out. Well worth the money. make that money back very, very quickly when the property starts getting booked. So I don't shy away from that. There are photographers out there that do it for 400, 500. I know there's some good ones too. This guy has just worked well for me, and I have no problem shelling out the money for a high quality product.
Yeah. And you want to, so you mentioned earlier, Corey, that, a saturated market. Well, you're separating yourself by the photography, being able to show the property in its best possible light, in best possible uses. And it goes along with like drone, it goes along with amenities around the property itself. Not just, really, poor quality versus high quality. You're getting the sense that you could actually stay there and have a good time based on the photos. Um, I was sitting in a webinar with a high level, coaching company, and they were saying something very, very similar. And this is why it makes a difference. Your photos don't necessarily need to be just photos. They need to be high quality. They can be photos, but your photos need to tell a story. This is a lifestyle, right? And if you can find a photographer that can pull the lifestyle out of that house with the photography, then you've hit a home run. So, it sounds funny, but some photos that you see on some of these properties, you see families in a hot tub, you see a glass of wine, you see, the ski resort, you see other things that don't necessarily relate to the property but are there, and you can say, oh my God, look at that fire pit. And I can imagine myself having a beer sitting next to it, and it feels good. So the right photography makes a difference.
Yep.
Cool. All right, Corey, share with us your last P, your last pillar. What do you think?
The last one is 100% without a doubt, pricing and how you price your property.
Okay.
You could have a great property. I've seen a lot of great properties with great photography that aren't getting booked. And the reason they're not getting booked is because they don't have the right pricing strategy. If you're getting into this game at this point, it's different than what it was 5 years ago, 4 years ago. You have to have a dynamic pricing software. There's a lot of them out there. I personally use Price Labs because I find it to be the most effective one that tracks with the market the best. And everybody's not everybody, people turn around like, oh, you got to get Price Labs. They get Price Labs that say, hey, I got Price Labs, but I'm still not getting any bookings. Well, I can tell you right now, when you're in Price Labs, you could set that thing up about 101 different ways. All it is software, and then you have to know how to click on it. You have to know what toggles to switch on, to switch off, and how to effectively set it up to be competitive in your particular market. The settings in one market may not be the same settings in another market, and you have to be able to look at the competition that Price Labs provides you so you can see what properties you're actually competing against and how much those properties are charging. The length of stays, like how long a person has to stay there. It's not just setting it at a 2-night minimum and then letting it ride, right? You want to get progressively shorter stays, but your far out stays, people who are more serious about taking their trip, you want those to be longer stays at a higher price point. And you got to be able to set up the right settings in Price Labs to correspond to the settings that you have in Airbnb, and then also match up to the settings that you have in your property management software so that they all coincide to get you the highest occupancy at the best rate possible. Because if you're just occupied on the weekends, you're not going to make it. Not with the interest rates that are out there now, not with your mortgage payment. Maybe if you paid for the property in cash and you don't have a payment. But if you're just booking up on the weekends and your weekdays are empty, you're going to hopefully break even. The weekdays are where you make your money, and you got to know how to get those weekdays filled up.
Yep.
So pricing is super, super important.
Yep. And so pricing matters for sure. There's a tool on Airbnb that you can use, but that doesn't work as well, right? There's other strategies to go in there. But one thing that helps in your pricing strategy is knowing the avatar. Who is that client that you're looking for to each property? right? So Corey, you have a 2-bed, 1-bath. You have a 4-bed, 4-bath. Are the avatars different?
Yep, it's completely different clienteles, right? Obviously, the people who are coming to the 2-bedroom have zero need for the 4-bedroom. They might like
Yep.
it. It's a lot of space for them, but I'm not sure that that property at that price point is what they're going to be looking for. Then you've got the people that would be using the 4-bedroom. They just wouldn't fit in the 2-bedroom, right? So it's a
Yeah.
different pricing strategy on each property. And you have to look at the information and the data that you have available to you in those softwares that are out there to determine where your pricing should be, how far out you should be changing the minimum night stays, how aggressive you should get on the pricing that's further out versus closer in, and whether or not you want to open it up for one night stays. In some markets, that's good. In some markets, I wouldn't do it. In a more urban or suburban market, I'm very hesitant to do one night stays, right? That's what draws in the parties. Those are the nightmare stories that you hear about. When you're in the middle of Page County or Shenandoah County, you're not hearing about the stories where people are having huge ragers there, right? They're not getting that many people out to a rural area like that. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of different settings in there, and you just have to know how to get it set up to optimize your revenue and optimize your occupancy.
Yeah. And just for fun, I mean, so I bought, or my team bought a great property. We were doing decent. We were probably 55, 60% occupied. Had a little chat with Corey, and within 30 days, that thing went from that 55 to 60% occupied to 95 to 100. And we're now sitting around talking, okay, how can we improve on the income any more than we, so now we're learning how to test different strategies. There's different layers in there as far as types of property, right? So there's the medium pricing, and then there's the high end pricing, and so just knowing the where to be, right, is, as far as pricing goes, makes the world of difference.
Yeah,
And so
that's the other thing to think about when you're buying, right? If you're buying a property and somebody shows you the numbers and you're looking at those numbers and say, well, I'm not going to pay that much for this property. I don't want to buy this property because it's not making any money. That has nothing to do with how you're going to perform and how you're going to run that property. If you're setting up the right property with the right pricing strategies, you could blow that number out of the water, right? This is what I did with my property in Rileyville. It was a 2-bedroom. I worked with Erin on that deal, picked it up. The reason the guy was selling it, his words, not mine, was I'm not making any money. Airbnb is dead. This market is too saturated. That's what he said. That's why he was selling the property. He made $40,000 on that property in the year that he sold. 2-bedroom, 2-bath in Rileyville. I bought that property, put in the hot tub, put in my pricing strategy. We did $78,000 on that property last year. So it is, again, it's, don't worry about what somebody else has done with the property in terms of determining whether or not you buy that property. Look at the property, run your own numbers, figure out what that property can do from a numbers perspective. And if it works, terrific, move ahead and buy it. Don't buy the property and then say, I need to make this much money on it to make it work for me. Know how much the property is going to make and then back yourself into those numbers to make it work for you.
yeah,
I've heard a lot of people who say, well, I need to make this much because I have to cover my mortgage. I'm like, well, what did the property, when you did your analysis on the property, how much did you expect the property to gross? And they're like, well, I just figured I could cover my mortgage with the rentals that were coming in. Well, no, you got to know the numbers and then make sure it's a good investment, knowing how much you can put down, knowing what the interest rates are, knowing what your other expenses are on the property. Don't buy it and then back yourself into a number. Know the number and then figure out your expenses to back into whether or not it's a good property or not.
yeah. So Corey, thank you. That's impressive stuff right there. Lots of little nuggets, folks, in that that will help you be more successful, or just get to be successful in the game. So we got about 15 minutes left. I know we've had a lot of stuff to talk about. So we talked about the 3 Ps, the property, the pricing strategy, and the photography. We talked about technology with Eric, how we got into the business. Anybody have questions? Very, shoot, we're ready to talk and help you get started in the game or at least get better in the game. So let's hear from you. Do I need to call people out? All right, Wendy, I'm looking at you. You tell me, Wendy, go ahead.
Well, I have a short-term rental, and I've benefited from talking to both you and Corey to get that set up. But I was thinking back to something you said earlier, Corey, that the barrier to entry can be upwards of 150,000. Are there some creative ways for someone to get in to a property
That's
that may not have that much? Because that is a big investment to furnish.
is.
I have a midterm rental too that I furnished in Front Royal. So,
Yeah, we
I
got to turn that one. We got to turn that one into a short term.
I know. You keep telling me that.
That's a great question. The answer to your question very shortly is yes. There are ways to do it where you don't have to bring as much money to the table. You're kind of narrowing down your pool of properties to choose from because you're typically looking for somebody who is in a specific situation. I don't want to say they're in a distressed situation because they're not always in a distressed situation, but the first thing you have to be able to do is find an owner who is willing to keep an open mind and think about creative ways to get the deals done. Erin and I are in the middle of doing one right now, where that person is not coming to the table with about half of that 150 number, and they're still going to have enough money based on the way that the sale was structured, to get that deal done and get the renovations done on the property as well. So that's able to. Now, the second part of it, and this is the more difficult part than the owner, and I do apologize to Erin and all the other real estate agents out there, right, is you got to work with the other agent to talk about these methods to get the deals done. And a lot of times I have found, and Erin, I'll kick it over to you in a second so you can tell me your experience.
Yep.
A lot of real estate agents are not even open to the conversation of figuring out a different way to do the deal other than the traditional way of doing a deal. They're hardwired to do the deal one way, and trying to get them out of the box to think about doing it or structuring it another way is extremely difficult. It can be done, but it's very hard.
Yeah. So this goes right back to regular real estate, right? So a client of mine is my fiduciary. I want to make as much money or save as much money, depending on the size of the deal that I'm working, right? And so there are transactions that just happen, right? Here's the price, here's the competition, or here's the price of the house and there's no competition, right? And so each deal is completely different. And so finding the opportunities in there are the challenges, right? And real estate, there aren't a lot of real estate agents that really understand the investment side of the business. They might be in a market where there's a lot of them, but they don't understand the nuances of each transaction. Corey and I know of a couple agents that are stuck in their ways, and we don't know how to get into that conversation with them because they don't want to talk about it, right? So when you see that property pop up, it might be the best one, but it's at the end of the day, excuse me, I'm sorry, at the end of the day, it's not going to work because the agent's going to stand in the way of making that deal happen.
It's also tricky because if it's a good property and there's people crawling all over it, there's no reason for them to do a creative deal like that, right? It's got to be something that's been out there, it's sitting on the market, or it hasn't hit the market yet, and you can work a deal. But something that is a hot property that looks good, that's going to work well, that's got 8 people crawling all over it, that's not the one to get creative with.
Yeah, and we'll just use a simple tool, right? So a lot of times you're working on buying a house, you've got a certain amount of money for the down payment. Let's just use the vacation loan. That's 10% down payment. Well, after that, then you're tight. You don't have any money for renovations or furniture or anything like that. So what can I do to help? Well, the very basic one, depending on the circumstances, is in the loan type, is get you up to 6% in closing cost assistance. Now, that's the easiest thing. At the same time, it's the one that most people don't want to see. They don't want to pay somebody else. The sellers don't want to see. They don't want to pay somebody else's closing costs. And it goes back. So if your listing on the market is 1 day old and you send them an offer for what you think the property is worth, and with closing cost assistance, they're going to just kick it back to you and say no. And then 5 days goes by, and now I'm frustrated because I've got a solid offer sitting there, and they're waiting the weekend out, and guess who comes floating around? Another person that won't, ask that number. So, it's an interesting game out there, but it's certainly something that can be overcome if you have the right relationships with agents, the right discussions about what the circumstances are, where it's coming from, and go from there. So, Wendy, I have something to talk to you about after this meeting too. I have a property for you.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I know
Erin.
you have something specific in mind that would work for you.
Okay,
So,
thank
yeah,
you.
I've been meaning to call you, and I have not had the chance, but you've been on my mind for a while.
Okay, good.
All right. So other questions. We've got 9 minutes left. So getting into short-term rentals, we talked about why they're good. It's another layer of real estate investing. Any other quick questions that we can help answer to you right
Vivian,
away?
what you got?
I have a quick question. I do corporate leases, corporate short-term leases, and we have about 5 at the moment. And just wondering, is there anybody out there that finds it challenging, or any tips? I've been doing it for about 3 years now, and we're kind of breaking even. And the rentals that we do are arbitrage, which is we rent basically sublease from major rental agencies. And we sub their room. We
Yep.
you know what I mean. We
Yep.
fix it up. We do everything. So do you find many of those around?
Probably. I mean, I haven't seen any. Maybe in Warren County, Front Royal-ish. No, I mean, like Page and Shenandoah, there's not enough corporate business coming into that area that I think would make a profitable midterm rental. I think is what you're referring to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wendy, I'm sorry, Vivian, I'm sorry. I have a friend of mine who specifically does management of midterm rentals. I would be happy to connect the two of you. Where she goes to get her clientele is sites like furnishedfinder.com. There's an insurance website too, where people, like, for example, they have a catastrophic issue with their home. The house burns down. There's electrical issues, there's water, whatever. They need a place to go, and insurance companies are paying for that.
Awesome.
I have, and Wendy does a lot of this too. But yeah, I can put you in touch if we have your information, but I'll make sure I follow up. This young lady, she bought this is the best story ever. And I met her at one of the grid locations, but she bought a downtown Philadelphia end unit like property, and she put a fence up outside. She bought it for like $200,000. So her mortgage payment was like $900 a month. She's pulling in $5,000 a month on that type of investment because of where it's located, because of the amenities that she had. Now, she doesn't have a hot tub or anything like that, but she has a fence around the backyard. Well, downtown Philadelphia, she can just let her dog, whoever stays, let the dog out the back door. Right? So I have the connection for you that she can really put you on the right path. So if that's the question, I'm happy to pass that along to you.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'll reach out on email to you for that. We do, Roger, we do have somebody in the Tampa Bay area. Absolutely can connect you with that. Our team lead, Rob Chavez, is actually setting up a business for our CAZA team in St. Pete, but we also have a grid office in Tampa so that we can connect you. The agent that I'm thinking his name is Mark Court, Kourt, but I will happily pass him along to you as well. Yeah. So beginner guide, we've created one. I can email that right over to you. So long story short, it's, in my mind, it's finding the right market that you want to be in. It's the rules and regulations, and then it's what Corey talked about. It's the property, the pricing, and the photography.
Yeah. I just put my number in the chat. Again, it's 301-725-6306. I'm actually, after we get off this call, I'm driving 4.5 hours to Shenandoah. So I've got plenty of windshield time if somebody would like to chat.
Yeah. And so our next meeting is about a month from now. You'll see the schedule. We're going to reach out. Right. But if you have any questions or concerns, real estate agents, if you have people that are looking for short-term rentals, reach out. I can help you. Whether it's a referral or just help you, point you in the right direction, I'm happy to do that too. So, just give me a call or send me a note, and we'll go from there. Rhea just added the next month's webinar link to our chat here. Anyone else?
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you again for everyone being here. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next month. If you see me out and about, Corey and I are going to be at the Grid Shenandoah coming up here in April, which is based in Front Royal. So meet us face to face in that place. If there's ever a time, I'm actually doing another webinar with Cherie Warwick, who is one of our open lenders. So, if you're in that particular game, please feel free to give us a shout. We're happy to connect.